First item on our agenda today is RS 32124, Representative Alfieri.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Committee members. Joe Alfieri from District 4, Coeur d'Alene, and I bring to you this morning RS 32124, which is a proposed change in the method of distribution of absentee ballots, qualifications for absentee ballots. We've actually, those of you that were here last year, we ran this legislation last year. It did pass the House. It did not get through the Senate. There is one change to what we've done this year, and that is to put in an age qualification as well, and that is that anyone over 65 can also apply for an absentee ballot with no issue. The reasons that we want to look at the absentee ballots are that it has been found across the country that is a potential area for fraud. And the reason that potential exists is that by putting something in the mail, you lose the chain of command. You don't have the ability to track what's happened. When you go to vote in person, you are identifying yourself to the poll worker. They're verifying who you are, and that is a very secure method. By using the mail, we lose that security. So we want to make sure that the people that apply for absentee ballots are qualified to use that. And what we're trying to do is to sort of limit the reasons why people can apply for an absentee ballot. And there are legitimate reasons for going to an absentee ballot. You may be in the military. You may be on a mission, a diplomatic mission. You may be out of the state for a legitimate reason. You may be in school out of the state. You may have an infirmity. You may live in a district where only absentee ballots exist. So we want to sort of narrow that down so that we don't have the potential of fraud in this state that we've seen elsewhere across the country. And that's the reason for the bill. I would ask for your support.
Thank you, Representative Alfieri. Are there questions for Representative Alfieri? Representative Scott.
I move to introduce RS 32124.
Committee, we have a motion to introduce RS 32124. Is there discussion on that motion or questions? There are questions today. Representative Barbieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will support the motion. Representative Alfieri, line 27 on page 1, could you elucidate, give me a little better idea of what you're trying to do there?
Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Barbieri. What we're trying to do is to let people know that there is a potential criminal liability for misapplying for a ballot. So we're not going to be asking the clerks to follow up and to determine that that person actually has a reason for it. We're just telling people that if you do this, you commit fraud if you misapply for an absentee.
Follow up?
Mr. Chairman, starting at line 27, it sounds like what you're targeting there is an individual who would misrepresent another individual's eligibility requirements. No person shall represent the eligibility requirements for voting by absentee ballot provided in section 1 of this section to any elector or prospective absentee. So isn't that assuming that someone else is communicating the eligibility requirements? Representative
Alfieri.
That's not the intent. If it reads that way, I guess we might want to do something about that. Is that how you interpret? That's not my interpretation.
Follow up, Mr.
Certainly.
Chairman. So, I mean, isn't the point of what you're trying to do there on section 2, starting on line 27, actually what you're doing starting on line 29, that no elector shall misrepresent their own qualifying circumstances? Isn't that the whole point of that paragraph, or am I misreading that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Barbieri, yes, that is what we're trying to do. That second line is the key one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Achilles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll be supporting the RS for print 2, but I've got a number of concerns that would appreciate Representative Alfieri addressing. First of all is I'd like to see some real examples of absentee voter fraud rather than potential examples. Let's look at the data. There's enough absentee ballots have been processed, number one. Number two, I think we need to explain the mechanics here or understand the mechanics. So how do I know I'll be sick or traveling within the window to request, process, mail, complete, and return an absentee ballot? That seems like it's impossible to connect the two. And the last one here is, looking at lines 24 and 25, we seem to be writing voter legislation that favors folks over 65 with homes outside of Idaho. Maybe that's just my interpretation, but let's get into that when this comes back for hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Keeley. Representative Dygart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Alfieri, I'm looking on page 1, lines 18, 19, the letter C, where it talks about, day of the election in order to work. In Hawaii County, we have a lot of folks that use the absentee ballots because they think they might have to, because the primary election in May is when everybody's turning cattle out to the far reaches of county, and the general election of November is when everybody's gathering all their cattle back from the mountains. Would they still be covered and allowed that because they may have to be gone and working at those times?
Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Dygart. Well, I would suggest that in that case, you have early voting. You have 2 weeks to a month, depending on the county that you're in, to early vote. If you think that's going to be an issue, you can use that. I would think you could also qualify for an absentee ballot in that case if work prevents you, and work is a legitimate reason. If work prevents you from getting to the polling station, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use that.
Follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So who's going to determine that? Is that going to be the county clerks that determine that? And, I look in Hawaii County, our clerk knows who these folks are and that those possibilities exist. Is that who's going to declare
Representative
that?
Alfieri.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Dygart, sir, we're on an honor system. We would expect that you would obey the law. If you feel it is a legitimate reason that you really cannot get away, and I don't know a whole lot about agriculture, but if your agricultural requirements are keeping you from getting to the polling station during that day, that's a legitimate reason for an absentee ballot. If you decide that you can go to Walmart, but you can't vote, well, I don't think that that's a legitimate reason.
Representative Mickelson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I see that we're favoring older people, and I have no problem with that because I'm getting towards that time in my life as well. But I also have lots of young mothers for daughters and daughter-in-laws right now, and they have 4 and 6 kids. And for them, if their husband happens to be out farming or working, right, for them to drag, and in one case, my daughter, I think she might have to go 20 miles, right? I don't see anything in here that addresses the needs of young families, young mothers. And I guess my question would be to you is, are we trying to limit people's participation and their voice by running this?
Representative Alfieri.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Mickelson, we're not trying to limit people's participation at all. And in fact, there is no statistical evidence that limiting the use of absentee ballots limits voter turnout. We've got some data on that. I can get into that during the hearing.
Follow-up?
Oh, just follow up, but I don't see any exceptions here for mothers that might have 6 kids that their husbands might be working, and to drag them all out. I don't see an exception in here for that, and I think that that's every bit as valid as a 65-year-old.
Representative Alfieri.
Chairman Crane, Representative Mickelson, I would respectfully disagree with you because I'm sure that mother gets out at some time during the week or the month previous to the election. Once again, I will point out that there is early voting as well.
Any further questions? Representative Crane, 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Alfieri. Just a clerical question. On line 12, page 1, right after the word vote, it's the word at any election. Should that read in any election?
Chairman Crane, Representative Crane, I don't know. Do you think that's, I don't know.
Can you give me the
At any election.
point as to
Okay,
where it's
I see
at,
that.
Yes,
Representative Crane?
Mr. Chairman.
12.
So on page 1, line 12,
Okay.
it says elector of the state of Idaho may vote at any election. And And then I was reading it to, perhaps it should say, elector of the state of Idaho may vote in any election.
It's current existing statute, so I don't think it.
Leave it?
I think you're fine.
True, it is. Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Seeing none, committee, we have a motion to introduce RS 32124. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. It will be done. The committee will have consideration RS 32004. Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is this, if we could turn back time?
I was hoping for some walk-up music.
I should have had that prep today. That's on the
Does
chairman.
anybody know what time it is or something along those lines?
I'm not going to try to sing it.
Once again, Representative Joe Alfieri from District 4, Coeur d'Alene. This is one that I'm hoping that you will be able to take to your constituents and say, hey, I made your life a whole lot easier. You don't have to go through that ridiculous change of time twice a year, where you have to figure out how to change the clock in your car or things of that nature. The reason for this measure is that there is a great deal of evidence that the yearly change back and forth is unhealthy. The American Medical Association has long lobbied against the change in time, as well as other medical associations across the country. There is also a great movement right now, which is manifested, actually, believe it or not, in Washington, D.C., to make this change as well. The idea is to just stop us from going back and forth, back and forth. It's not healthy. It's unsafe in the morning to send children out in the dark to go to school. And for many other reasons. That's why we want to do this. Just have us go to standard time and leave it on that. We're not able to adopt daylight savings time on our own. That has to be a congressional measure. We cannot do that. But we can move to standard time. And that's what this measure is about.
Thank you, Representative Alfieri. Are there questions for Representative Alfieri? Seeing none, the RS is properly before the committee. Representative Scott.
I move to introduce RS 32004.
Committee, we have a motion to introduce RS 32004. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried, and that will be done. Committee, that completes our work for today. We'll stand adjourned.